Good afternoon. I'm Karen Lewis, President of the Chicago Teachers Union, and we are here to release to you the autopsy findings of a vibrant school community that was vilified, placed under arrest, and eventually executed by this school district. Our investigation, A Tale of Two Schools, the human story behind destructive school actions in Chicago, examines what happened at Simon Guggenheim Elementary School in the West Englewood community and warns of what will happen to the Beidler School in Garfield Park community. The Guggenheim autopsy was conducted by Kevin Russell and Dr. Carol Cariff of CTU's Stellar Research Department. The study was made possible by a grant from the Communitas Charitable Foundation. In addition to our researchers, we are joined by Patricia Nix-Hodis of the Chicago Coalition of the Homeless, former staff from Guggenheim, and community leaders who have been active in fighting for the schools our students deserve. So let's get into this report. Kevin, can you share with us the highlights of what you found?
While we know that school actions affect almost exclusively African American communities, these demographics do not tell the whole story of school actions. CPS has failed to conduct in-depth analyses of the closed schools themselves in order to learn from their previous mistakes. To fill in this gap, we performed an autopsy of Englewood's Guggenheim Elementary, studying the causes and effects of its 2012 school closure. We also examined East Garfield Park's Beidler Elementary, which was threatened for closure in 2011 and 2013. To collect information, I interviewed 10 people deeply familiar with Guggenheim, a member of the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless, and 9 members of the Guggenheim staff, including the principal and 2 teachers who each worked at the school for 20 years. At Beidler, I interviewed 9 experienced teachers and PSRPs and discovered that CPS's repeated threats of closure have produced a culture of fear at the school, creating an unnecessary obstacle to student success. Despite resource deficiencies, the Guggenheim community is using research-based strategies to build a stable school climate based on collaboration, teacher input, and a clear vision for the future. Guggenheim, however, never got this chance. CPS and its appointed administration made many egregious missteps. The Guggenheim staff was never given the opportunity to implement their ideas for holistic improvement. The district and the Guggenheim administration not only impeded progress, but it reversed it through destructive policies that destabilized the school and set it up for closure. CPS then implemented a haphazard transition plan that led to only 37% of the students, the non-graduating students attending the designated receiving school, and 90% of students dropping out or not accounted for by CPS. CPS now wants to close 54 neighborhood schools, the most at one time in American history. How can CPS guarantee the smooth transition of the over 16,000 students at schools being proposed for closure in 2013 when it failed to guarantee the transition of the 250 students at Guggenheim last year? If CPS did not investigate and reveal the damage it imposed at Guggenheim while closing only 4 schools last year, how can the district do a proper investigation of the 54 proposed for closure this year? At each school proposed for closing, consolidation, co-location, or turnaround, there's a story. There's a story that's inextricably linked. There's a story that involves real students, teachers, staff, and administrators that are inextricably linked to their school. We need a moratorium on school closings until CPS develops a plan to complete these in-depth investigations and release the findings to the public for consideration. Thank you.
Hi, Carol Cariff from the Chicago Teachers Union Research Department. And I wanted to say that closing 54 schools based on looking at spreadsheets and ignoring the evidence that was presented at the many hearings that CPS held is unconscionable. The report that the union just did of Guggenheim and Beidler demonstrates what you learn about what a school needs when you ask the right questions and when you listen to educators and parents and learn what it is that the school is all about. The position of the Chicago Teachers Union is that we need to invest in schools, not close them. What's the logic of setting up charter schools in neighborhoods with declining populations and then saying, oh, these schools don't have enough students, we have to close them? If CPS would invest in these schools instead, for one benefit would be attracting students from more populated neighborhoods. Instead, schools in the closing neighborhoods don't even get the basics from CPS. Ironically, Guggenheim wouldn't have been closed this year. It was not an underutilized school. So CPS capriciously changes what they use to close schools. It's 1 year they say it's because they're underperforming, another year they say it's because it's underutilized. This is why CTU and others are calling these attacks on schools that are segregated and in predominantly African American neighborhoods. That's why we're calling them racist. It's not personal about the CEO of CPS, but it's because there's no plan for resourcing and enhancing the education of students in these schools. Instead, they're closed and communities are disrupted. The report that we are talking about today looks at the realities of the schools. For Guggenheim, it looks at the homeless population, the mobility, the turnover of administrative staff, the fact that teachers left and were not replaced. We would suggest that CPS carefully looks at the schools it's talking about closing, that it talks to parents and educators and not just look at the numbers. Thank you.
Please spell your name, but say your both names for the
Hi, my name is Ifeoma Nkembi. It's spelled I-F-E-O-M-A, and the last name is spelled Nkembi, N-K-E-M-D-I. I was a teacher at Guggenheim School for 2 years, I would say, and I was put into a classroom in the beginning of the year in 2011 to 2012 with 43 students. First day was actually 17. The next day was 43. And this was all because of a mix-up. And for a school that was already on the chopping block, and we all had incentives to make sure that we did extremely well with teaching and making sure that the ISATs, the students were ISAT ready, that is a detriment to teaching and being able to manage a classroom. Some of the kids were not moved because there was a mix-up downtown. So not until the third day did I have my regular classroom, which turned out to be 38 students. Some of them which were repeating third graders, some of them were 10, 11 years old, some going on to 12. Very difficult environment to teach and to teach up to the standards. And it was a problem from the first day till the end of the year. It's a lot of chaos, especially with the announcements of closings. Children felt like they were mishandled. They felt like they weren't heard. There was a lot of disruption in the classroom, and nothing was done by administration to solve the issue, solve the problem. Rather, it looked like they just wanted to make sure the school closed down on that note. So it began on a tumultuous note, and it ended on a very harsh, tumultuous note.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rosie Burns, and I was the librarian.
Spell your name.
Rosie, R-O-S-I-E, Burns, B-U-R-N-S. And I was the librarian at Guggenheim. I taught at Guggenheim for 19 years. I hear and I heard about the money that CPS claimed they poured into our school. Well, my library did not receive a budget, a penny, since 2007. And I had to work with the public library with grants and the library card campaign, trying to get up-to-date materials for our students to work with. My library had outdated encyclopedias. I had 2 working computers in my library, which made it very difficult when you have classrooms coming in and everyone wants to do research and do their reports. So I tolerated a lot of abuse, and so did other staff members. Administrators telling us that you don't care about our students. If you did, the discipline would be better. But I don't understand how you can say that a teacher doesn't care when I worked through my sickness, my illness. I went through chemo and radiation, and I was there every day. I came every day after my treatments. I love my Guggenheim students. I wanted them to succeed. But at the end, CPS won out.
Hello, my name is Cherie, S-H-E-R-R-I, accent mark on the I, Dabney, D-A-B-N-E-Y, hyphen Parker. I worked at Guggenheim for 7 years. I was a teacher assistant, the homeless liaison, after-school coordinator, and the All-Stars after-school coordinator. At Guggenheim, we were treated really bad. We had national board teachers and tenured teachers that were harassed, bullied, and intimidated, threatened with E3 procedures and disciplinary write-ups, resulting in them leaving, resigning, or retiring early. We had no assigned teachers in certain classrooms for 3 to 4 months. With day-to-day subs, students suffered. We had classes that were overcrowded with no assistants. Our special ed students suffered because at the parents' request, they did not receive the services they needed. They were ignored from 2010 to 2012. From 2010 to 2012, our students had no assigned gym teacher. Our school staff and students struggled under an appointed principal from CPS who received a bailout in 2011. She leaves Guggenheim. Students suffer again, even more. We receive a new principal in 2012. He comes in, continues to attack and bully students and staff, transferring our homeless ed students out. We had 1/3 of our membership was homeless ed. 91 students were transferred out with no receiving school. Guggenheim students and staff really suffered. The students felt demoralized, they had low self-esteem, and a sense of not belonging. Today, they still have those same effects. There was no transition plan for our students and no safety plan. Guggenheim students did not benefit from the CPS action. When CPS closed Guggenheim down, it forced those students to transfer and be placed in schools that perform no differently than Guggenheim. CPS has a policy and they create conditions and label schools as failing. Guggenheim, staff, and students suffered. CPS should have given Guggenheim all the resources and the support we need because all of our children deserve quality education and a world-class school in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Patricia Nix Hodis with the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless. My name is spelled P-A-T-R-I-C-I-A. The last name is hyphenated, Nix-HODES. The proposed school actions this year impact almost 4,000 homeless students, which is 8.5% of the impacted enrollment. That's more than twice the rate of homeless students in CPS overall, which is 4%. These proposed school actions are massive and unprecedented in Chicago and across the country. And they amount to experimentation on our children, many of whom are very vulnerable because of their unstable living situations. We share the concerns that the CTU raised in their report today. Since 2004, with the announcement of Renaissance 2010, the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless has assisted students experiencing homelessness impacted by school closures. CPS has never demonstrated the ability to successfully transition students experiencing homelessness and other students from closed schools. Students become lost in the process, and Guggenheim is just an example, a very bad example of many things that CPS mishandled with the transition process of homeless students. As of November 2012, 23% of STLS students from Guggenheim were not enrolled in a Chicago public school. 14% of the STLS students were not accounted for at all, while others left the system, apparently. Our involvement at Guggenheim began over the winter break prior to the school closure. While Guggenheim at that time was just a school proposed for closure, the principal issued transfer notices to the families in STLS, telling them that teachers wouldn't come back after winter break since the school had been announced for closure, and encouraging them, or requiring them to transfer to another Chicago public school. This was illegal, and we intervened to ensure that the families were able to remain at Guggenheim. Throughout that spring and throughout the summer, the Coalition for the Homeless met with school staff and families and students to help them understand their rights in the transition process and to determine the individual needs. The STLS liaison, Ms. Parker, who spoke here today, was extremely supportive of the families and the students. The principal, on the other hand, was not. We had difficulty after difficulty in getting needed services for the students. Things as simple as fee waivers were not provided, uniform assistance was denied, serious problems and delays in getting students evaluated for special education, and other needs were not met. Then over the summer, the STLS program, which is Students in Temporary Living Situation, the homeless education program at CPS, reorganized when they were in the process of working with homeless students from Guggenheim and transitioning them. All of the STLS workers helping Guggenheim families lost their jobs in the reorganization process. Then at the start of this current school year, the manager of STLS took another position within CPS. Yeah. So all students are harmed by this chaos and destabilization, and homeless students are particularly vulnerable due to their unstable living situations. Thank you.
Thank you. So, as you've heard, despite butchering the transition at Guggenheim and failing to give schools essential resources, CPS now wants to close 54 schools, the most at one time in American history. In the past few years, as we've just heard, the criteria keep changing. We have a constantly moving, shifting set of stands. School closings are not the solution to solving our education problems in this city. Shutting down schools does not improve education policy because buildings do not educate our students. Well-resourced, supported teachers and staff do that. School closings are not popular and are not the solution taxpayers want. That is why thousands of people, parents, students, clergy, educators, civil rights activists, and community groups have been engaging in direct action all across the city. Hundreds of parents and teachers at the targeted schools have been consistent in their testimony on why their schools shouldn't be destroyed. Stakeholders have presented CPS with evidence of improved test scores, school utilization, and the viability of their schools, but all of this has been ignored. The mayor has said no more negotiations. Board members have been trotted out to parrot CPS talking points as if they have already voted on the matter. There is no democracy here. These hearings Most likely sham events are designed to provide therapy to people impacted by their decisions. So if the mayor and his hand-picked corporate school board will not listen to us, we must find those who will. This is why Chicago Teachers Union will launch a comprehensive and aggressive political action campaign in the coming weeks. We intend to continue our advocacy against school closings, turnarounds, and phase-outs until the board rubber stamps this plan on May 22nd. And on May 23rd, we're going right back out in the streets. Along with our community allies and partners, we intend to, number one, launch a citywide voter registration and education campaign. We want to put at minimum 100,000 new voters on the Chicago rolls. We are going to go door to door in the neighborhoods where people's schools have been shut down and their jobs have been lost because of this administration. We will be hosting Who Wants to Run for Mayor? Who wants to be an alderman? And who wants to run for statewide office political education boot camps, where we will help vet people interested in public service. We do not intend to wait until 2015 to do this. We intend to join the efforts to find qualified people right now. So if anyone out there wants to stand up for our students, parents, for educators on a strong research-based education agenda in this city and will pledge to fight the status quo, visit our CTU website, www.ctunet.com, for dates of these trainings. We're going to go ward by ward because our new mayor will need good people in the city council who aren't afraid to stand up for taxpayers. We're going to move through these districts because our state officials are going to need to know the people who put them there, that are not only behind them, but are counting on them to be their voice in Springfield. We will increase donations to our political action committee. These candidates will need money and resources to run successful campaigns, and we intend to canvass neighborhoods. Good candidates need volunteers, people who can go precinct by precinct to find disaffected voters, re-energize them, and get people to the polls. And we know that we may not win every seat we intend to target, but with research, polling, money, and people power, we can win some of these. So, thank you very much. We are calling on the people that have the power and the people who are most impacted by this to come together, have some real conversations. Accountability goes 360 here. Thank you.